Welcome to the I Empower podcast, where stories become art and art becomes important reminders. Each week, we dive deep into the story of a special person who discovered their power against all odds. All of the inspiration is then memorialized into a single unique painting that reminds us to be great. So, if you, my friend, are looking to step out of your own way and into your life's full and well deserved potential, this is the place for you.
If you're not allowed to process and feel the anger, the pain, all that stays within you because you're not allowing it to release, right? You're not vocalizing it. You're not, doing the inner child work of what you needed. That inner voice can't be trusted if it's not healed, in a way, because the inner voice is coming from a place of pain or protection and fear versus love and peace.
Thank you so much, Jasmine, for being on the show today. I am so excited to talk to you and learn more about you. I actually found you on Instagram through one of your empowering posts that caught my attention. And I actually pulled it up because I want to read the quote that you put. And it says, "My ability to conquer my challenges is limitless. My potential to succeed is infinite." And I just when I read that, I was just, oh my gosh, this is so powerful. And then you proceeded to say take it from someone who has lived through some real soul crushing experiences and is living open. And I just love that you're using your platform to share your journey with the world. And so I just wanted to have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you. And I'm super interested to know what it is that makes you who you are today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be here and just share my story with your audience. My name is Jasmine Montoya, and I'm an energy healer, shamanic healer, spiritual guide, trauma healer, all the above when it comes to healing and working through your trauma in a more conscious way. And and how it started, gosh, I started my journey, my healing, I like to call it my healing journey, when I was in a very toxic and emotionally and mentally abusive marriage. And that kind of set off the trigger of, how did I get here? How did this happen? I thought I was on a trajectory of living the dream life, which
Right.
on paper it looked like a dream life, and many people wanted my life. I worked very hard for it, but it was how I worked hard for it was more on a surface level. And I didn't realize that I had a lot of traumas in my childhood and working my way through the corporate world that impacted me and changed and altered who I really was. And in turn, I became who I didn't want to be, which was a very unhappy woman who was just smiling on the outside and screaming
Right.
and dying on the inside.
Oh, wow. I can relate to that. I actually had a not so great marriage. And that was one of the things that I noticed on your feed was that you used the word narcissistic was, was what caught my eye as well. And so tell me about that relationship. Were you young when you met your ex-husband? We like to talk about, we've had guests before who have experienced narcissism in their life. And a lot of times, and especially in my case, it's not as prevalent to begin with. And then it opens up later. And then you kind of feel like you're kind of stuck, I guess, or you've got so much invested. So how was that for you? Was that something that was, that opened up later?
Gosh, yeah, I wish I could say, and not that it matters, honestly, what
Yeah.
age, this happened, but I was 30. I was in what I thought a good age bracket to be like, I'm ready to, and I'll be honest, I didn't want to get married. It's more as like I was ready to be a mom. But
Yeah.
I thought in my head and the way the journey ended up, I was, what would be the word? I wasn't forced, but I felt very obligated to marry because
Okay.
we were pregnant. I personally, Jasmine, didn't care for marriage. I don't need a document. I've always been very free and wild. And it's like, why are you telling me what to do? Like, I'm doing it this way. Like, I don't
Yeah.
follow. I never follow. I do my own thing. That's been hard as a woman and as
Yeah.
first generation um, woman as well. It's been very difficult and challenging to always just go against the grain. And it's not like I was doing it on purpose. I was just wanting to honor myself.
Right.
So I wanted to become a mother. And then the way, the story went, it just, between talking to family and, my ex, it was pushed upon me. And I saw the red flags. I did, but I was just ignoring it. And I'm like, no, this is what you need to do, right? This you're pregnant. You need to have a husband, and this is just the way the story goes. And it didn't fit very well. And because I only knew him for a year, all the smoke and mirrors fade. And by the time I realized who he was, it was quote unquote too late, because I felt like
Yeah.
we already have our family. Let me just try to make this work. So many women make this
Right.
work. I know so many women who are not happy in their
Yeah.
marriage, and you can just deal with it somehow. And I thought I could, and I couldn't,
And I feel
clearly.
like that is, yeah, I feel like, do you think that that's like societal, I don't even know if that's a word,
Yeah. Well,
pressures,
yeah,
cultural pressures to make
a
us as women,
1,000%.
um yeah, and
A
I feel
thousand
like
percent.
that I hate that too, because I think that a lot of times that's when we find ourselves in these situations where you are quote unquote kind of stuck, especially when you put the legalities behind it and you get married and then all the paperwork comes in and then trying to undo that. I made the joke once that it's easier to get married than it is to get divorced, like way easier. They make it really hard for you. And I think, unfortunately, too, I wish there was a way that we as a society could change that for, the women and even the men of the future, that, we don't have to have that textbook, what everybody says, because of course, like you said, the first thing that you get pregnant and then, family, just because that's the way that it's been forever,
Hmm.
is you get married and you live happily ever after. And, I think a lot of times women and men too can find themselves in really toxic relationships.
Yes, and then especially when you bring in children, it's just a bad combination, and it's totally societal norms. Like you said, men and women. I definitely don't want to, always say women, because I've seen men dealing with this as well. But just for my sake and my story, and
Yeah,
who I can,
women.
yeah, who I can vocalize for and speak for, because I am a woman. There's so much pressure. You have to stay in the marriage. You're not a good mother if you don't, and you just have to
Mhm.
smile and take it. And it's just like, no, actually we don't. And I prefer to live happy and single than be miserably married and with bad
Yeah.
company. And we are
Well,
and we are
because
changing it. That's the thing. It's like,
yeah.
so many of us who are just saying, like, you know what, this isn't for me. I don't care of having the scarlet letter of being a divorced woman and
Right.
all that stuff. Like, I'm happy, and that's what's important. I'm at peace. And I really could care less about the outside world. Even more now with my experience, I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care what you think. I don't care
Yeah.
what you're projecting on me, because I know me, and I'm good.
Yeah, I love that energy because, and a lot of the things that I've heard toxic, like the toxic marriage, umbrella, I don't even really know what to call it, but when you start to go through issues and you're speaking on the issues, oh, well, just, hang in there at least until the baby's, in out of school, in college. Wait till they're an adult, because we've ingrained that into our society, that it's so important to have that mother and father figure there, that people, I think, are forgetting that if mom's not happy, baby's not happy. And, they can feel that. And if there's, bad energy in the house, and there's just, because I think a lot of times it is really hard, especially when, if parents are fighting, even if you try to hide it from the child, I think that the children know they're smarter than
Oh, our
what we
children.
give them credit
Oh,
for.
I mean, our children are smarter than us, and we're born, with this. intuition and these gifts, like these spiritual gifts, like I like to call, like we were all born that way. But it's like society or culture or family starts chipping away at things. Like, don't believe in yourself. Don't believe in that intuition. Don't believe in that voice, because that voice doesn't matter. It's the overall voice that we need to, like, follow. And that's not true. And when it comes to our children, they sense it all. They know it all.
Mhm.
And it's like they follow our example, not what we say. They follow what we do. So for me,
Right.
it was just like, what am I showing my child? I'm being a hypocrite. So I need to
Yeah.
show him that mom can do anything and we can face anything. And if you're not happy, like genuinely not soul happy, to get the F out.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is so important that you said that, and I wish more people would be open with these types of conversations and this type of, way of thinking, because I know that was one of the things for me and my daughter was I didn't want her to think that this is what love is and that this is normal relationship, because they're going to repeat those patterns. I think I repeated the patterns of, some of the relationships that my mother had been in. My mother grew up with not really good, strong relationships. And I don't know if we like subconsciously, pick those partners that are
Absolutely.
similar to what we were used to. And so that was the ticket when I told myself, I do not want my daughter to repeat the same things that I did. I don't want her to think this is what love is. I don't want her to think that this is what a healthy relationship looks like. Yeah, so that was one of the things, and I'm sure that a lot of people, will find comfort and when we're honest and we let people know that when you do get out of that relationship, it's hard. It's really, really hard. You go through a lot of, even if it wasn't an extended time, mine was an 11-year long relationship and it was hard. I went through a depression. Um, I had a lot of soul searching to do like you did to try to figure out like who I was and like what I wanted to be. So like tell me how that was for you once you got out of that relationship. What did it look like for you?
Oh, well, number one, sadly, I'm still going through the divorce process.
Yeah.
It's been over 3 years. And why so many women stay. And I always want to highlight this because, as a healer, all of my clients always think that I'm absolved of the world's pain and that, I'm somehow above things and things don't happen to me. And that's baloney. I just have the tools to know how to navigate through it. And I don't believe it's the end all be all. I know that the power is within. But so many women choose not to leave out of fear of the retaliation of what the
Yeah.
ex would do, which I was one of them. And then there just came a point where I was just like, I'm gonna die. Like I'm going to die here. Not that he was physically going to hurt me, but my mental state was not strong, and I was going to deteriorate. And then eventually, suicidal thoughts were, happening because it was just like,
Yeah.
where am I? Who am I? So during that marriage is when I started to question and awaken to all the things. So I actually was doing the work within the marriage, knowing that at some point it was going to end. So I kind of
Yeah.
had a lead start, an early start. While in the marriage, I was doing the work, which helped me also understand how toxic our marriage was. So I was working through that. And when I left, I was in such a state of peace, when you get your first apartment and you're just like, okay, like this is my space again. Like
Yeah.
I'm safe. I feel like me. So it was, I feel like I did the hardest work, unfortunately, in my marriage, unfortunately, in my
Yeah.
marriage, because it was really hard evolving and changing. And he was trying so hard to keep me small. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not playing that game anymore. So when I left, I was really prepared because part of my journey too, I'm a spiritual advisor, right? So spirituality and energy work is how I've gotten through this. And so I was very aware of my trauma. I was healing my trauma from my childhood. I was gaining, excuse me, my spiritual gifts as far as intuition and reading energy. Like I just trusted myself more so than the outside world. And that is how I just navigated through that. I did the first year, I like to say I was in like hermit mode. So I was just really like focused on my kid, making sure he was okay because he's going through a lot and he has no
Yeah.
idea what's happening and it's not his fault. And I tried to really cushion the fall as much as I could and focused on work and, getting myself to a place where I felt comfortable and, proud of myself and just, I'm like, this is a new beginning. And I've always been one to shift and move and start new. So that experience wasn't that difficult. But when you're a mom and you have, the added child and all that, it was hard. And then throwing the pandemic, I was solo
Oh,
parenting, going through a
yeah.
really toxic, divorce. It was, but I had my inner peace. I had, my self love, and I just trusted that everything is happening for a reason. I'm learning my lessons. I have a good community, because you need a community. You can't do this by yourself at all.
Mm.
I'm very independent. I'm very like, I was very toxic in the way of like, I can do it and I'm going to do it by myself. And I'm
Yeah.
still like that. There is something to be said about that because it's so rewarding and it's so like, you have this like superwoman, like I can do whatever. But also, I learned to receive and I learned to open up a little bit because trusting is also something after that that's hard to do. And again, going through a toxic marriage, it is insane what you experience, the people who say they're your family, who go on the other team. So you're just like, you try to really disconnect and only let in certain people that you can wholeheartedly trust, which is hard when you're going through so much emotions. There's just a
Yeah.
lot getting thrown at you. So it's like being grounded is key. And how are you grounded? By knowing your truth, by knowing that what people say are just words and they can't penetrate you, and you stay in your truth and in your light. And that's kind of like how I've been navigating the storm.
Oh my gosh. That's so amazing. Like, oh, I have so many questions that I want to ask you. You're like talking about these amazing points that like I think are so important that women hear. You mentioned the super mom. And I think that it's important and I feel like I'm seeing a little ripple of a movement starting to happen with that. For so long we've prided women for being the super moms and doing everything and going to work and taking care of the home and taking care of the children and then being okay. And I think like what you said is that it's so important that we realize the importance of community and having that group of people that are there to support you, and like normalize needing help. And I know I personally, that was something that I had to just in this past year really realize that it's okay to ask for help and it's okay to need it and it's okay to like not do everything on your own. I just think that's amazing.
Well, the pandemic, I know for a fact, brought up a lot of stuff with mothers because we had to work and also tend to our children. And not, again, I don't put the alls and everyone's, but a good portion, the moms were doing it all and the dads were still
Yeah.
just working. So
Yes.
it's like, where's the off balance here? So,
Yeah.
people are finally waking up and women are speaking out because that's why we suffer from depression. That's why moms like to, have wine o'clock. That's why moms
Mhm.
are burnt out. That's why moms, like have to, are bitter because they have to stay home with their kids or they, like, so, there's so much to that. And, the way it was back in the day, there's a reason why they say it takes a village to raise a child
Yeah.
because
It's
that's
like my favorite thing to hear people
right,
say
because
that. I
that's
love
how
it.
it used to be. Like you go, back in the day and it would be everybody in their little communities, and it would be the community helping, raise the
Yeah.
children. And here we just in our society now and the day and age that we're in, we don't have that. Like my family is in the East Coast. Not that I honestly they're toxic. I wouldn't want them around. So it's a gift,
Right.
but like like I'm alone, so I have to build my
Yeah.
own village, which honestly I almost feel like it's better in a way because then you can choose
Yes.
your healthy community
Yes.
versus feeling like you're forced to be in the community that you were born in.
Yes. I love that. We talk about here, I am blessed to have my husband's parents move back from the Virgin Islands. I just had a baby, so like they're here to help me with the baby, and we call it, our village. And I just, and I love that when you have that those people that are there to help you. And I know, I think it's definitely like American, I think, culture that we've pushed on to our lives, and it's just been ingrained in us through years of, the mother stays home, the mother, keeps the house clean, the mother takes care of the baby, and the mother does it all. And, and I think it's even to the point now that like we subconsciously like keep that in. So, I find myself when it comes time to clean the house, like I need to do it myself because I'm the mother, even though I do technically work, my husband works, but we just feel that pressure. And I think it's so important that we just normalize, you know,
Not doing it,
not,
or guys
not
like,
doing
yeah,
it.
doing the laundry or cooking. Like I think subconsciously I don't cook because that's more of my like, ooh, I'm not gonna cook because I'm a woman. I'm supposed
Um,
to cook. Like, no, I'm not gonna
yeah,
cook. I don't cook good, and that's it. And it
it's
is
not your
ingrained in
thing.
us. And we have to, and that's why for me, I chose energy healing because it it was something where the disconnect that I had and so many people that I see, majority of the world has, is the fact that they're not connected and they don't know their true self, right? So it's like, oh, well, this is my voice in my head, so clearly that's my voice. It's like, no, that voice is actually not yours, but it's ingrained and it needs to now be rewired. Like you have to train yourself out of that, just like you were trained into it. It wasn't your natural
Yeah.
state of being.
Ah. So this energy healing, tell me about that. I'm very intrigued and very interested. This is new to me. I don't know anything about that. So this played a role in it is played a role in your ability to leave your toxic relationship. It's playing a role in your healing currently. And then is this like this is your life, right? This is how
This is
you.
who I am. It's always
Okay.
it's always played a role. I just never understood it. So when I was young, I would see spirits and I would see those past, and I would also feel energy. I would feel someone's energy. I mean, that's just how I can explain it. I was young, and
Yeah.
I would, they would introduce me to somebody, and they would present themselves a certain way, and yet I would feel them to be different. And as a
Oh.
young child, that's very confusing because I was like, where are these feelings coming from? Like, I remember telling my parents, it's like, I don't like that person. I don't trust that person. They're like, oh, were there this and that? And I'm like, no, there's
Yeah.
just something, like I have an off feeling. And as
Yeah.
always, like with everybody, it's just like, okay, whatever, and then after a certain point, I was like, well, I'm confused and I'd rather not be confused. So I'll take people for face value because that's what they're showing me. Even though I feel it to be different, I'm not trusting these feelings. No one's telling
Yeah.
me that I can trust them. I'm also seeing freaking weird shit that's, excuse my language, that's scaring me because
No,
I'm
you're good.
little. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
who am I seeing? Why are
Oh.
they around me? Like, so I just shut all that off. I shut it off.
Wow.
And, it followed me throughout, my entire life, but it wasn't until I moved to the Coast and I was in that, like what I call the Alice in Wonderland, going in the rabbit hole and trying to find yourself, that I
Yeah.
fell into, as it happens, like I was detoxing and doing cupping on my body. Because again, for me, it's like the whole detoxing is mind, body, and soul. So my body too had to detox, as well as
Yeah.
like everything else. And I found this shaman, and she was an energy healer, and she was like, oh, do you want to add it on? And I was like, well, when in Rome. I'm like, I don't know what energy healing is, but like, let's just try it.
Let's do
Let's
it.
do it. I'm like, I'm game. And then afterwards it was like this huge shift. Like everything made sense to me. Like my senses were open. I was more in touch with Mother Nature. I felt this weight that I didn't realize I had on me lifted off. And
Wow.
that's when I'm like, oh, now I understand who I am. And then I sought out one of the best teachers, a Reiki at the time, in San Diego. And I studied with her for over a year to just really understand it. Because I'm somebody that was, and it wasn't even supposed to be like my career. It was just like, this is for me. This is my healing journey and I need it.
Yeah.
And for me, how I do things is by learning them and really understanding them and then incorporate them in my life. And that's what I did. But it just so happened to be that it's like, no, this is actually me. I've always been this way. I've always been an energy healer as far as understanding energy and reading energy. I just never harnessed it. And now I can move energy and I can hold the space for people to feel, because like I said, we're disconnected. We're like unplugged, right? And so what
Yeah.
energy is I'm plugging you back in and we're moving through stuff, because everything is energy. This isn't woo woo. This is scientific. You can Google
Yeah.
that everything has a
Yeah.
vibration and a frequency. So if everything has a vibration and a frequency, where does it go? If it's not moving, where does it go in your body? And that's where dis-ease happens. That's where anxiety happens. Like
Mm.
anxiety is that energy, right? You feel this energy and it's trapped energy. So we
Yeah.
just have to move it. We just have to feel it. But so many people, including myself, we run from it, we numb it, we suppress it, and it comes out later on with other ailments in our body. And we don't know what is happening, but I understand it to be that it's the trauma, and using that word very loosely right now, because I know that's a buzzword. And, I've experienced trauma, on many levels. So just so you know, like I'm speaking from my traumatic experience, but that word is used very loosely now. Like everybody's in trauma, and that's not the case. So
Yeah.
I just want to honor that word, because I don't like how people are just using it for like, oh my God, I couldn't buy my $1 million house. So that was a traumatic experience. It's like, okay, like
Yeah.
no, but
Okay.
yeah, but it stays in our body. And who wants to feel through stuff? It's really
Yeah.
intense, to feel through some hardships of our lives. And so you disconnect, you subconsciously disconnect, and our subconscious is like trying to protect us. So it's like, oh no, we're not going to we're going to just like, it's going to be in here and it's there, but you're not going to like really feel it, but it'll come out in certain times and years later. And energy work helps to feel and move past in a safe environment, because half the time I'm feeling it. I'm feeling their stuff. They're not feeling it, but I'm feeling it
Yeah.
to pass it through.
God, you're literally giving me cold chills. Like you're blowing my mind right now. I have a little bit of knowledge. I'm so glad that I'm getting to talk to you today because like this is very interesting to me. I have a little bit of like energy knowledge because I worked in chiropractic for years,
Mhm.
and we talked about the body runs on energy, and if it's like you think of it as a water hose. If you
Right.
got a kink in
Yep.
it, it's not going to flow properly. And one of the chiropractors was also acupuncturist, had a diplomate in acupuncture, so like super knowledgeable on Chinese medicine, and talked about energy healing. And she even mentioned one time like having earrings in certain parts of your can disrupt your energy flow, and I always felt like that was super interesting to me. And I seen a TikTok not long ago where somebody mentioned trauma being trapped in the body, and comes out as different, like you said, ailments like facial pain or neck pain or back pain. And
Autoimmune,
I
a
think,
lot of people, again, I'm not a
yeah,
doctor, so don't
yeah.
take this, but like I know a lot of clients who have autoimmune had severe trauma as children.
And so you're a lot of people think that they don't put the connection together. So with trauma healing that you do, what does that look like? Somebody comes to see somebody who is a healer, and you have methods of just releasing, helping that person. I know, like you said, that we like to like we'll pack it away. And I know some of the traumas that I've dealt with in my life, I don't remember them as vividly because I have packed them away and put them away. But you're saying if it's not handled and um I don't know
if
the
it's
word I'm
not if
looking
it's
for,
not
but
worked through,
yeah,
if you're
okay.
not allowed to process and feel the anger, the pain, all that stays within you, because you're not allowing
Wow.
it to release, right? You're not vocalizing it. You're not doing the inner child work of like what you needed, because like you said, like it eventually will come out. So there we have
Yeah.
all these blockages and these disconnections, and at a certain point you're disconnected from yourself, and so you choose to do things a certain way versus that inner voice can't be trusted if it's not healed, in a way, because the inner voice is coming from a place of pain or protection, and fear versus love and peace. which is where your
Wow.
authentic voice is, right? Because that's your truth and you're honoring it, and it's just flowing out.
Wow. Yeah. And I think that I can speak for a lot of people when we talk about real trauma, it's something that it's hard. So I'm assuming that going through something like this, healing yourself from these is gonna be hard. And I think that that's probably
It's
important, maybe.
intense. I mean, there's a few things. It's intense. I will
Hmm.
never lie. My journey has been into. I'm love and light, but I'm also darkness, right? Like it's like you have
Yeah.
to have the duality. There's no such thing as love and light if you're not embracing the darkness and your shadows and doing all the work. It is intense. It is very hard. A lot of people are in pain, and it's just very embedded in their bodies. It's hard for me as a healer to see this, because I have just such a big heart. And it's hard me feeling through it too, because like I said, majority of the time, I'm the one feeling all of that versus them because they're so detached. So that's part of the process is attaching or reattaching or reconnecting to all these feelings so this way you feel safe. It's layered, it gets deep. When you shift the energy, the outside world feels it and they don't understand what's going on. So then you start getting all these other, you know, stressors of friends or family, people not understanding things either. And also, a lot of people, not a lot of people, but a few clients, came to me at the beginning thinking that I'm the one doing the work and they just like lie there. And it's like, no, actually, number one, I can clear your energy, but what I can't do is us focus on the root and move it out without you playing a huge part in it.
Yeah. Wow. This is so interesting to me. So, if someone's interested in doing this type of healing, who would they seek out? I know you mentioned, is it Reiki? Reiki?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different names, an energy healer. There's Reiki, that's part of energy work. It's just like, a subcategory, it's a different style. But it would be an energy healer. And especially if you're, if you've had trauma or you feel like you've had, some people aren't sure, again, our
Yeah.
subconscious just kind of blocks things. I know, and for me, there were
Mhm.
certain things that arose in my healing journey that I kind of knew, but I kind of didn't, like it was just like,
Yeah.
was that a dream or was that reality? And sadly, it was
Yeah.
reality. So you have to make sure that, it's somebody you feel comfortable with because they're connecting with your energy, so it's like, you don't pick somebody, right off the bat without understanding who they are. I personally want somebody who has lived through it, has gone through the experience of what I've gone through and is proof, is living proof, kind of like how I am. I'm like, this is my story, this is my healing, this is what I do, this is what I know. And I know
Yeah.
it because I lived it, not because I think it, not because I went to school. And, I mean, not that schooling isn't good, but when it comes to this, like, you need it all. You need the whole package. You need the schooling, but you also need the life training, I feel personally, because
Right.
I want somebody who has lived through it and is proof of like, oh, that's what I want to become. And it's about just doing the work and making sure you feel comfortable with that person too, because energy work, like, you're allowing them. And I know, like, many people are like, oh, I don't know what that means, but when you know what that means, you're like, oh, it's very
Oh,
intrusive,
yeah.
right? So you want somebody that you trust with your energy, because you're
Yeah.
open, you're leaving yourself open. And when I connect, like, I see a lot of things that, that so many people wouldn't want to hear from someone. So it's like understanding too how to deliver that message.
Oh,
and
wow.
and there are times too when I see things that I know my client isn't ready to work through, so I just leave it because it's not my position and my place to almost trigger. I don't want to trigger someone into
Yeah.
healing or a setback. The work I do is very it's sensitive, and I honor that, and I honor everybody's journey because everybody's on their own journey. Everybody has their own, timeline and way of slowly processing it. Because I'm like, let's go. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
dive in head first. Like,
Let's
come
do it.
on. Yeah. I'm like, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it 1,000%.
Oh
But
my goodness.
I've learned, and I have clients like that, and I love it because I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then it's freaking hard too, but I'm like, we got this. But then I have other clients that are like, no, like, I'm honoring my process. I'm like, good. I'm like, you need to.
Wow. Oh my gosh, you're just like blowing my mind right now. This is amazing, and, it makes me think of, like, the movie I always tell my husband, like, that's how I want the world to be is like Pandora or, Avatar. Have you seen
Oh,
that movie?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, like, how the earth is all, like, connected and the energy is and I think it is, like, scientifically, they're finding out that it is like that,
Yeah.
and I just think that that's amazing. I can imagine that somebody who is also so I don't think and you can correct me if I'm wrong, someone who is a medium, doing this type of work, I can imagine that that would be a lot more intense for you as opposed to maybe somebody that's not. Or is that something that mediums usually do? They usually see their calling as being energy healers.
No, again, I've picked and grabbed my gifts, right? So if you're a medium doesn't mean you're an energy healer. If you're an energy healer doesn't
Uh,
necessarily mean you're a medium. It's just I was always again, I see energy. So it was just something that was like natural for me to, and in my sessions I was like, "Oh, your grandma's here." Oh, I and the way I see it's
oh
kind of
my
cool. I see like the
gosh.
lineage because a lot of my work has been ancestral healing. So I see your
Yeah.
lineage and who's like your ancestors and who's with you, and it just again it wasn't something I almost didn't want to do that because I'm like I felt very like I'm like I don't want somebody coming to me wanting a message, and what if I can't you know what I
Yeah.
mean, like I don't
Right.
want that pressure. I want to have a session, and what was happening was people were just showing up, and I'm like, oh, and I was like, okay, I'm like, well, this is the message, this is who I saw, and it was just something that like became part of my session. Like, so when you have an energy healing session, there's no guarantee, but majority often than not, I will see someone or I'll see your lineage and I'll know who's, protecting you and who's around you. And if there's messages that come in, they come in.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So you mentioned ancestral healing. What do we hold traumas from our ancestors or can you tell me what that is?
Yeah. Have you heard of the word epi, I always say it wrong, but epigenetics?
Epigenetics.
Yes.
Okay, yes. No,
So
I have not heard of that word.
okay, well, it's the study and it's the research that trauma is embedded in our DNA, right? So it goes from generation to generation, and so that's again something that has been studied. And ancestral healing for me, because of where I came from, first generation Colombian, and just having a different type of life and a way of being, I understood that to be the norm, but it wasn't, right? And so there was a lot of toxicity, like you said, like I, and I love my parents to death, and I've done a lot of work, understanding our parents do as the best that they can with what they were given, but it trickles
Yeah.
down, right? Their parents
Yeah.
were abusive, my parents were, so it just when does a cycle of toxicity and abuse stop?
Yeah.
It stops when one person is like enough is enough, and I'm aware that this
Yes.
is not healthy or right for me. But it does, I've had people where their grandmother had a situation and now it's replaying very similarly in their life, so somebody has to break it. And I chose to be that person, which is a very heavy path to take because it's like I'm like I
Yeah.
don't want my child to experience anything of what I experience. I want him to have a better, healthier foundation, to be who he wants to be.
Yeah.
Even something, excuse me, as simple as like religion, and I was raised really Catholic, like really
Mhm.
Catholic, and understanding that fear-based reality and just breaking that, it's just something, again, it's because even when I was going through stuff, I'm like, gosh, I'm like, am I a bad Catholic? I'm like, oh, it doesn't even matter, like what does that even mean? So it's just, yeah. But going back, circling back to the ancestral healing, we do carry the pain just like we carry the triumphs of our loved ones that have passed. I truly believe that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is like, again, you're blowing my mind. I'm learning so much from you and I love it. This is awesome. Um wow. And so I just want to like circle back to try to give hope to people when you decided to make that change and leave the toxic relationship? You said that you started to prepare yourself ahead of time. How important do you think it is, and would you recommend that for anybody who may be in similar situations and fearful of leaving? I know sometimes it's just easier to just like leave, and if you have the opportunity to leave like that, I think that's fantastic and takes a lot of strength. But somebody who may be finding themselves in like a similar situation that you were in, how important is it to prepare yourself before that?
Well, one thing I want to say is if you're physically, sexually, or any point where your life is in danger, you leave immediately. There's
Yes.
no pass go, you get out.
Yeah.
Um, because I never want to have the message of like stay and no, like
I think that is important.
yeah. So
Yeah,
please go seek
definitely.
help. You're not alone. There's so many,
There's so many
so many
resources.
resources for that. But if there is some like leeway, if there is some like okay, like it's I'm just unhappy, I can see this going down really quick, so let me get prepared. Of course,
Yeah.
you want to financially be okay, you want to mentally be strong, because you don't know. You always hope that you leave and you guys can be friends and kumbaya, but I mean, and mine's like the extreme of toxicity, so I
Yeah.
understand that there's different levels of it, but just to make sure that you're prepared, because there's so much that you're going to be triggered by, and this person who has been your person for years knows you inside and out, knows your
Mhm.
triggers, knows your insecurities, and guess what, they're going to use it against you. Hopefully they don't, but
Yeah.
they will. And what happens when you're triggered and when you're being judged and shamed, and all your skeletons are coming out because the person doesn't know how to deal with their own emotions, so they're abusing you in another way. I call this legal
Yeah.
abuse. I'm like, family court, all this stuff, I'm like, it's a legalized,
Oh my
it's
gosh, it's
legalized
terrible.
abuse.
It is.
It's just
And
the
I see so much of that too, and it's oh, it's so sad. But yeah, that's probably one of the things that one of the advice that I was given was document like
oh
everything.
my gosh, yeah.
Document
No,
everything.
no
So
phone
many people told
calls.
me to do that and I didn't do it like I should have. And I feel like it made a
Yeah,
difference. It would have
well,
made a difference. I'm just gonna say that.
yeah, there are apps now that you talk to that person through that app. There's no voice conversations, everything is documented this way. When you have to go back, and hopefully you don't, like I'm not one, I want these everybody who's getting a divorce to like be amicable, because to me I feel like there could be a new way of divorcing where it's just like, hey, we didn't work out, but I still love you, we still have our family, so our family's going to look different. That's what I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
hoping for, and then I got the
yeah.
complete opposite, and I was like, okay, well now we're not even, because of the toxicity and the abuse you keep on spewing at me, we're not even going to have a relationship. So I'm going to show my child that you don't take that. And, I tried, and now, because there was a point too where I was trying to, knowing what he was trying to, and he succeeded in taking my son away. So currently, right now, I'm battling to have my rights as a mother being brought back and my son being brought back, because
Yeah.
he unfortunately won this round.
Yeah.
But it's something where you need to just, yeah, have everything in line and hope for the best, but also be prepared for, have your shit together, because it might go down, and you have everything. It's he said, she
Yeah.
said. And when you're in front of a
Mhm.
judge, if you have all that paperwork, documentation, and everything, like, also not only documenting it, but putting it in the way where a judge can look at it as a
Yes.
story, because what I did
Yes.
is like I had everything, but there was so much, it was just dumped,
Yeah,
that
and
I
you're
don't
like, I
even
don't
think
yeah.
he even read through anything. So it's just like, what's the point of having that if you're not categorizing it and putting it in a way where they can understand the bigger picture?
Yes, and because I think that, if unfortunately, a lot of times it comes down to who has the best lawyer and who has the most money.
Hmm.
I know a lot of cases. I know of people who this has happened to them. Similar situations
Same
like what
here.
you're talking
Yeah.
about, where children were taken away, and then I know somebody who had one child. She had multiple children, and then she had two dads, and the dads like ganged up and like literally took all of her children from her. And like, I can't even begin to imagine, excuse me, the pain that you have to go through experiencing that. So I just want to give you like a virtual hug, because you're amazing. You're doing great, and you're going to get through this. But documenting is so important. I know one of the key, like you said, laying it out in a way that is legible for a judge, because they have so much on their desk that they don't want to filter through,
Hmm.
and you're going to get the best bang for your buck, I guess, is
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Because
proper
even,
way to say
listen,
it, if you have it that way.
even with lawyers too, and I hate to say this, but it's a politic game, right? And lawyers
It
know
is.
everybody knows everybody, so
Mhm.
this is a moneymaker. Not to say you don't trust your lawyer, but at the end of the day, you are gonna be the mama bear fighting for your kid. There's
Yes.
no one else who's
Yes.
gonna have that, like, do or die energy to push through this. A lawyer, you're paying them, they have that disconnect, which is good because they can, be emotionally unattached. But at the same time, I wouldn't say that I would put my faith in my lawyer. I put my faith in myself. I put my faith in the lawyer the
Yeah.
first time and I learned.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you're supposed to tell
Yeah.
me. It's like, oh no, I need to tell you.
No. Yeah. Yeah. So that's great advice. So, anybody who's looking to, because I know it's a scary thing, and like you mentioned, you fear the outcome. We would like to think that it's always going to be rainbows and butterflies, and
No.
I think there are cases where that is like that, and that is fantastic that people are able to to parent that way. But there are cases where it's a vindictive
Oh yeah. And
way
the
of,
patriarchy energy is still here. I
yeah.
mean, we're seeing it everywhere now, like where the more women rise and they're in their power and they're independent, there's a certain type of energy that wants to keep us down and they'll do anything to keep us down.
Yeah, definitely, unfortunately.
Yeah, well,
I'm
I
hoping
mean, it
I'm hoping that there's gonna be a, I know that there's a movement of change, but
it has to start somewhere. So the fact
yeah,
that we're bringing awareness and many people are fighting the good fight, because that's another
yeah,
thing too. Like, you understand, like, for me, I tell my story. I can't tell it in great detail because I'm still in it,
yes.
but because that's another thing of, like, them trying to
Girl.
silence, and
Oh,
you have
yeah.
to be mindful, and your watch, and there's just so much to it that it's like, all right, well, I'm going to share what I can in a very strategic,
Yes.
mindful, checking with my lawyer way, but I'm not going to be silenced. And when I can, I'm going to scream my story to the rooftop. It's just
Oh,
it's a matter of
yes.
time. It's not if, it's
Yeah.
when.
I'm gonna have you come back, and we're gonna
Oh
we're
yeah, and
gonna
then we'll
talk
do a
about it
deep
some
dive.
more.
Yeah.
Yes, and that'll be awesome, because I feel it. It's gonna be great for you. So I do have a few questions that I want to ask you that I like to ask all of my guests.
Yeah.
So we're gonna jump right into that. We like to talk about stepping into our own power and not thinking of that as a bad thing. How do you think of, or how would you describe the power that you have to step into every day?
Oh, gosh. You know what? I think the most powerful tool is love. And I know this is going to sound hokey, but even more powerful than love is the unconditional self-love you offer yourself. So
Ah,
every
yes.
day I step into that. Even if I'm not feeling it, that's when I give myself more love. So it's having that compassion, and awareness of what I need, because again, the inner reflects the outer. So if I'm giving myself all this love and nurturing compassion, guess what? I can show up for my child, for my clients, and for the world, because that is what will fight the fear that is being just projected and shoved in every orifice that we have, in order for us to stay in a very low vibrational frequency, which is fear.
Yeah.
You can't like, again, manifestation. I love these manifestation coaches. It's like, actually, you heal yourself, you raise your vibration by healing yourself and coming from a place of love, and then you can manifest anything. That's
Ah,
the that's the trick.
I do love the manifest thing. I've always been curious about that, and I've even like made social media posts be like, do you believe in like law of attraction,
I co-create with the universe. I understood why everything happened the way it did, but I also understand that now, because the one fear that was always lingering was that he was going to take my kid away, right? And I had that, and that was very gripping. That was very, it blocked me in many ways. Cause in other ways I'm like fearless, but I'm like, I have this dark cloud
Yeah.
that he's going to take my kid away. Like he's going to do
Yeah.
everything possible to take my kid away. And then once it actually happened, the blessing in the trauma, as I like to say, is that I didn't have any more fear. Like the ultimate fear that I had in my life was that my
You
kid would
did
be,
it. Yeah.
they ripped him away from me. I had to deal with that, which was very dark and scary. But then
Yeah.
after that, I was like, shit. I was like, I'm not scared
Now.
of anything
Yeah.
now. And how powerful is that? Because
Yeah.
now I'm just like, I'm loving myself, because
Oh.
the fear is a low vibration. And so again, if
Yeah.
we're just talking scientific, if you're vibing on a lower frequency, you cannot manifest. Or if you do manifest, you're manifesting that same frequency. So coming from a place of unconditional love is one of the highest frequencies. And gratitude, showing gratitude for everything, it attracts everything. And what you're wanting to achieve will just like slowly happen. Like I said, this journey, I've tested it. I've tested it out as far as like, I need this. And, as a single mom,
Yeah.
I need this to pay for this lawyer. And then a big client comes in, like I'm feeling down. I'm second guessing myself. I like to call them earth angels, where, it's a person who kind of just pops in your life, even for a moment, and gives you a message. Like there was one time where my ex called CPS, because that happens. And
Yeah.
I was like, gosh, I'm like, what is happening here? I'm like, and you start second guessing yourself, right? Because this
Yeah.
journey will make you question it all. Like, am I a bad mom? And the moment I thought that, this woman just came up to me in Target randomly, asked me a question. She goes, I knew you would know the answer. And she goes to my son, she's a great mom, huh? You have one of the best moms. Like, I didn't know this woman. And it
Oh
was like,
my
and I just
gosh.
started like, and I'm like, I needed to hear that, and it's just those things
Yeah.
that when you're just vibing and you're just really coming from a place of love, the universe, God, Buddha, whatever you want to call it, I feel like it's the
Yeah.
same thing, except it's just a different view, a different
Yeah.
name, a different
Yeah.
image. But it's the universe saying, I love you, you're supported, you're not alone.
Holy shit. Like
That's how I've
oh my
done
gosh.
it. People are like, how did, because
Yeah.
I didn't have a support system. And there was a lot that went down with my family where I was like, I was already disconnected from them, but I put down the freaking concrete and I'm like, no, I'm doing this. So, and I moved to the West Coast. So I didn't have a community. So I've been literally doing this on my own, building my community. Cause I'm like, I don't want a community where it's just because they're there and I want soul family.
Yeah.
I want people that have my back, that have my son's back, that love me, so I'm not forcing it, but I've been
Wow.
doing this on my own, guided by the universe, as I like to say.
Yeah.
Always not, and with my
That's
ancestors.
oh my gosh. That's so amazing cuz like I've always been curious about, and I try to do the manifesting and affirmations and things like that. And and this is recent. This is a recent thing that I've been like curious in. And my question to you is, you talked about your biggest fear, and you knew that it was something that you shouldn't really be thinking about, but it was still like there lingering. So, like, how do you, and I find myself doing that because my husband is a very positive person, like insanely, almost grossly positive. Like, it's, I'm so thankful to have him in my life because I came from such a negative place
Yeah.
for a really long
It's a
time.
good balance,
So,
right? Like,
oh my gosh. And he like so when I struggle with these things, and I struggle with anxiety really bad. And so I have these moments where I'm like, okay, I know I'm not supposed to think about this thing, but so I'm not going to think about this thing, but like how do you really actually not think about this thing, cuz even though I'm telling myself not to think about it, it's still kind of there. So like
yeah.
what's your advice on like not doing that?
Well, it's hard, number one, especially like in my case, like you knew at some point it was going to happen, but
Yeah.
practicing mindfulness. Now, I know, again, that's another buzzword, and there's a lot of people that's like, oh, I practice mindfulness, but true mindfulness is being so present in the moment, right? So if you're present in the moment and you're smelling the air and you're looking at every detail of like nature or wherever you are, or you're engrossed in a conversation, you're as present as can be, like 100% in it. And when you commit to that, you're not in your head, you're like in your body. And
Yeah.
that is something that takes training. But again, awareness is key. So once you're aware of it, it's like a muscle. You just have to, keep on reminding yourself and do it to where it just becomes your natural state. Because I was one who I couldn't even meditate. Like I had so much anxiety. I had a severe
Yeah.
panic attack one time when I tried to lay in Shavasana. Now, Shavasana is just after a yoga session, you just like lie there for like 10 minutes. After five, like my body was twitching and I was like,
Oh,
it was
wow.
like, run,
I gotta
run,
get up.
run. Yeah. And I got up and they were like, whoa. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, I did not feel safe in my body. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's a thing. Like there's so much going on. You're not aware of all this uncomfortableness and this unsettlement. But it is really just go back to your breath, connect with your breath, move. I love nature. Nature is so healing and it's for free. You don't need a membership. You don't, just, go out. If you get so caught up and you can't be present, then step away from whatever you're doing and disconnect and go away for a moment. Like whatever it is, go to nature, go to the ocean, put some music on and dance, just shake the energy up. This way you go back into your body. Cause this is your head space is great and all. I mean, I prefer not to use it. I live more heart based. I'm learning to balance it a little bit more because I'm like, man, maybe too heart isn't that great for some things, but it's
Yeah.
about being back in your body. So if you're in your head and you find yourself not being able to get out of it, then do something for yourself that makes you get back into your body. This way you can be more present, because presence will take
Wow.
you away from all these thoughts and you're just here. Like your focus is what is right in front of you.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, I just want to like touch on this one more time and
Yeah,
like tell people that like man, I really do believe in manifesting things and we can manifest some negative things too. I just want to
absolutely.
give you an
Yeah.
example of mine. I was going down the stairs in my house. I have two flights of stairs from upstairs to downstairs. I have my baby in my arms and I'm like, "Oh, I need to be careful." I had socks on. I need to be careful or like, what if I fell? And literally, bottom two steps, foot slips, and I fall with the baby in my arms.
Oh,
And I'm like,
oh
I
my gosh, that's
100%
scary.
believe. I know it's terrifying. Of course, it scared the baby more. It scared her more than it did. She didn't get hurt,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I
yeah.
definitely had a bruise like
Oh.
the size of I don't even know how. I mean, my whole ass cheek was just like straight bruise. But like I after I did it, I was like, "Oh my god, I totally did that to myself." Like, why would you think of something like that going downstairs? But so I definitely believe in the power
Yeah,
of manifesting.
the universe doesn't understand the negative. So if you're
Yeah.
speaking something, the universe is like, okay, I don't want to fall. Okay, she wants to fall. Like that's the way. That's the translation. Okay, like that's what it is, because the universe doesn't
Yeah.
understand. I don't want to, so that's why I'm
I
like,
don't want to.
don't speak negative. I am.
Yeah.
I want. Like it's
Yeah.
all of that. And again,
Yeah.
it's rewiring, it's retraining. We all were like that. And same thing with me. Sometimes I'm like, no, 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 no. I want this. Because you can go like,
I want
I
it.
don't like. I want this.
Yeah.
This is. Just be so clear with what you want versus like what you don't want.
Yeah.
You know.
So like putting out the pot and like that's the key thing that I'm getting from that is using positive language when you're wanting positive reactions.
Yeah, but it's
And because like don't is kind of like a negative. So
right, right. So it's just asking what you do want, like what, like let's just say like with guys, like, oh, I don't want this. No, it's like you know that, and it's
Mhm.
good to know,
Yeah.
right? Because that helps you then decipher what you do want, but then you focus on what you want and what you're trying to manifest. I want a guy who's emotionally intelligent. I want a guy,
Yeah.
like that, not like I don't want a guy who's gonna cheat on, it's like just leave that to the side.
Right.
You focus
Yeah.
on the positive of what you want to bring in, and that's what you're gonna start pulling in.
Oh, that's amazing advice. I feel like I'm learning so much from you. What is the best piece of advice that you have ever been given?
Um, the best advice that I've ever been given, not to be scared to dream and to dream big.
Ah, I love that. And that kind of goes into the whole
Yeah,
manifesting
because
thing.
I have manifested my life in many ways, both good and bad. Like you said, I manifested
Yeah.
my dream career. I manifested my my what I thought dream family,
Yeah.
so dream. I mean, the sky's the limit. Like there's no limitations to what you can do. It's the limitations we set ourselves up for that, you know, puts us in a box. Who wants to be in a box?
Yeah.
I don't want to be in a box.
I feel like I've read that in a book somewhere where it just talks about like, not putting yourself basically in a box,
Yeah.
like just it really truly embodying the sky is the limit. Like anything that you want, if you really want it, like it can be yours.
Yeah.
I love that. Um, what is the best piece of advice that you would give a younger version of yourself who is in the thick of struggle if you had a few moments with them?
Oh, gosh, take the time to heal. Because if you heal when things are happening, it's a lot easier than going back and healing, than
Yeah.
having all the stuff come up and all the things show up. So it's like love yourself enough to sit with the pain so this way you can move on because that everything passes. That's the thing. It's like we run from things because we're like, I don't want to sit with it, but you sit with it and it might be a moment, it might be layered. So it might be maybe more than a moment, but it passes. It's like
Yeah.
even with the pain with my child being, taken away, that pain passed. Not to say that I'm not still in pain, having being a mom, not having my child, but that big pain
Yeah.
was released.
Oh, that's beautiful advice. I want to thank you endlessly on behalf of our team and every single person who heard your incredible story and connected with it. After the podcast, I will be heading straight to my easel to create a painting that represents what I personally felt and saw from your amazing story. If anyone is interested in seeing that process, you guys know that you can follow us on Instagram and we will continue the process there. And of course, if anyone's interested in purchasing one of the limited edition prints, as a reminder, step into your own power, you can do so at my website. But yes, Jasmine, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Mm,
It's truly incredible.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate any platform where I can share.
Yes. I want to thank my guests so much for sharing their incredible story of transformation with us. I'm going to link their social medias below so that you guys can give them a follow through their incredible journey. If you personally felt connected to the story and you would like to purchase one of the limited edition prints that goes along with it, you can do so on my website at jessicajames.com. That's JESCAJAYMES.com. Of course, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at I Am Power Club and like and subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss next week's episode of I Am Power.